Hey y'all, how we doing? Welcome back to Mr. Smith's YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about a certain health topic. This is usually I use this for my fifth grade health class actually when I taught when I was student teaching I should say. This could be like a fourth, fifth, sixth grade level. Again, I taught this for my fifth grade lesson where we're going to be talking about safety today. So all kinds of different types of safety that we can talk about, but today we're going to be focusing on food safety. One of my favorite lessons that I actually taught while I was student teaching. Um, Again, there's a bunch of other safety issues we talked about, but when I was student teaching, we mainly focused on food safety, and then also we talked about online safety, which I feel is a huge deal, especially with technology these days. I think online safety is very extremely important these days, especially for them to learn about online safety. So anyway, just kind of an overview. Safety plays a huge role in our everyday life. Again, even especially online safety, things like that. But everyone has the right to feel safe at all times. Therefore, I feel it's extremely vital that safety awareness is covered in the classroom. In order for students to identify potential harms or dangers in many different environments or circumstances or other things that may happen in everyday life. So, so again, something I think is extremely important. To start off my safety unit, I um I just usually ask kind of like a little opening activity, just have the students give a definition of what they think safety is. So I'll give them a couple minutes to do that. Just kind of ask them like just write down your own personal definition of safety. Give them a minute or two just to write it down, and then we'll just kind of overview some of the answers that they have. Again, it's nice just to hear what they think safety is all about, just in general, not just like a certain food safety or anything like that, but just safety in general. Just kind of hearing their ideas and then basing it off that. And it's nice to kind of gauge where they're at and see what they think safety is. So it's a nice little activity to start with. And then I'll just give like a couple definitions of safety that I have. So like on my PowerPoint, I have like the freedom from occurrence or risk of injury, danger, or loss, keeping yourself and others free from harm or danger, which is extremely important, and then taking the proper steps to avoid risk or being hurt, or having safety plans in place in case an emergency does occur, which is another huge, important part of safety. Sometimes you might be as careful as you possibly can be, but unfortunately accidents happen. But if you have emergency plans or safety plans in place, so if an emergency does happen, I feel it's very important as well. So at least you have something in place if something does happen. Um, so we kind of start with that again. A bunch of different types of safety that we can go over. Today we're going to be talking mainly about food safety, but again, online safety is another great one to teach kids. Water safety, environmental safety, home safety is another good one, and then sports safety, especially if you have a bunch of students that are in sports and activities like that. Sports safety is another one that I like to cover as well. So again, food safety. Start out with usually kind of give them some statistics, certain things like that. Just kind of get their mind going to think of like how important safety can be. This one I got here is like each year, 1 in 6 Americans get sick from eating contaminated food. Again, something when you're younger, you don't really think about at all. So kind of just get them in the right mindsets to realize like it's pretty important. 1 in 6 people, kind of a big deal. And then I like to start off with the four key steps to food safety. So I start with the four key steps to food safety. 1, clean. 2, separate. 3, cook. And 4, chill. So 1, cleaning. So making sure we're washing our hands, utensils, any other surfaces that you're working around, like countertops, things like that. 2, separate. Don't cross contaminate certain foods, like raw meat, poultry, things like that. Just keep those away from your fruits and vegetables, other things. 3, cook, making sure we're cooking our food to the right temperature. 4, chill. So once we're done cooking, what do we do with our leftovers? We want to make sure we're refrigerating and freezing those properly and putting those in the fridge or freezer, wherever they need to go. So we'll start just kind of overview with that, and then we go more into detail about those as well. Um, I don't know if you guys have heard about Brain Pop. It's something we used when I was student teaching a lot. They used that where I was at located for my student teaching. They used Brain Pop, and a lot of great information on there, especially for like elementary to middle school, lower middle school level, so like fourth through like sixth grade. So a lot of good stuff on there. If you go on the app, you can download it. I think it should be free. And again, there's a bunch of information on there. They have a bunch of video clips. So after I go overview kind of food safety, what we're talking about, I usually go have them watch the Brain Pop video. It's about like 3 to 4 minutes long. It's a great video actually. Gives a nice like brief overview of what we're going to be talking about in detail more. So we'll watch that and then we'll move on. So we'll kind of ask them about the video, certain things that they saw in there as well, and then go from there. So then we'll go into detail about the food safety steps. So one, clean, once again. So we'll talk about like germs that cause food poisoning can survive in many places and spread around your kitchen easily. So that's why it's extremely important to clean everything. We'll talk about washing your hands. I usually do a hygiene portion in health before this, so it kind of ties in to the food safety. So washing your hands, cleanliness, things like that. So making sure we're washing our hands for at least 20 seconds with soap and water. And then it should be at temperature. Water level should be about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. A lot of people think that's really hot, like you're going to burn yourself. But if you think about it, like a heated pool is 75, 80 degrees. 100 degrees for 20 seconds, it's not really going to do a lot of damage, you know. And again, we need that warm water to kill all those germs and bacteria, make sure we're getting those off our hands and other things like that. And then we'll talk about rinsing our fruits and vegetables off as well. It's extremely important. After that, we'll talk about food safety step number 2, which is separate. Again, I'm just kind of briefly just running through this. Obviously, we take more time during the lesson. So number 2, separate, making sure we don't cross-contaminate certain things. So like raw meat, poultry, seafood, eggs. Again, these can all spread germs to ready-to-eat foods unless you keep them separate. So it's extremely important to keep all those foods separated. Also, we want to use separate like cutting boards, plates, if there's raw meat, poultry, or seafood on them. Obviously, you don't want to cut fruits and vegetables on there. So we'll talk about that with the students as well. If you only have one cutting board, obviously you're going to want to wash the cutting board and then reuse it after you wash it thoroughly. And then just again talking about even grocery shopping. So I like to kind of have conversations with the students while we're talking about the safety. Like example, going grocery shopping with your mom or dad. Ask them if they ever go with them. Again, you want to keep those foods separated, the raw meat, poultry, with all the other foods in your shopping cart as well. And it might not be something you really talk about. But like an example, I know most people probably go grocery shopping. If you get a raw meat or poultry, sometimes some of the packages will have a leak in them or a cut in them. So talk about things like that. See if they've ever noticed anything like that with their parents, if they go grocery shopping with their parents. So I kind of like to interact with my students and see if they have anything they want to talk about. It makes the class a lot better, honestly, when you interact with them and try and get them involved. Makes the class go by a lot better, and they seem to be way more engaged once they're included and talking about their life stories as well. So I think that helps quite a bit. And then we'll move on to step 3, food safety step 3, cooking. So making sure that all the foods are cooked to the right temperature. Again, food is safely cooked if the internal temperature is high enough to kill the germs that can make you sick or germs, bacteria that are in the foods. And then talk about food thermometers, making sure we're using a food thermometer to check food temperatures. And again, giving examples like during Thanksgiving time, I'm sure you've seen your parents use a food thermometer in the turkey, things like that. Ask them if they've noticed their parents doing things like that, or if they ever helped them cook or anything like that. Talking about how some foods, like burgers, chicken, you can also check them by the color as well. But again, the safest way is to use a food thermometer just to make sure that the temperature is high enough. And again, we want that to be the internal temperature because obviously the outside temperature might be warm enough, but the internal temperature towards the middle might not be warm enough. So we want to make sure we're cooking all our food to the right temperature to kill all those germs and bacteria. So after we go over that, we'll go over step number 4. So step number 4 is chill. Making sure we're refrigerating foods properly or freezing them after we're done cooking them. Talking about the right temperature for your fridge, so making sure your fridge is below 40 degrees. Again, talking about the danger zone is another thing I like to talk about with my students. So danger zones between 40 to 140. You don't want to leave your food out. Excuse me. So you don't want to cook your food after you have it cooked, sit on the counter. Again, you don't want to leave your food out for more than 2 hours. So in the danger zone, 40 to 140. Got about 2 hours till you put it away before it starts to spoil or go bad. Kind of ranges from like if it's 40 to 90, you have about 2 hours actually. If it's 90 to 140, you got about an hour. So going over that with the kids as well. talking about how you shouldn't really thaw foods on the counter. I know some people do that. I'm probably guilty of doing that at one point in my life as well. But really, food should be thawed in the refrigerator. Again, just another safety issue. Like, you don't want all the bacteria and germs spreading on the countertop, things like that. Again, and if you forget about it, if you leave it on the counter, you get past that 1 to 2 hours, it's going to start spoil and go bad anyway, so you're going to have to toss it. So talking about that, seeing if they have any questions while you're going through all this stuff. Another thing I talk about is food poisoning, again, which can be very serious. So I like to give like a lot of examples and statistics during that part as well. I know, like one of the ones I have right here, Center of Disease Control estimates that each year about 48 million people get sick from a foodborne illness. 128,000 are hospitalized, and about 3,000 people die from those illnesses. So it kind of gives them a picture of like how serious it can actually be. It's unfortunate. I've had food poisoning before. I'm sure a lot of people have. If you don't get it taken care of and you have some pretty serious symptoms, it can lead to a lot of issues and a lot of problems. So it's something that can be very serious. So again, just kind of giving them statistics, things like that, for them to think about, so they can kind of gauge like how serious it is. Again, it kind of keeps them more interested and engaged in the activity as well. Going over food poisoning symptoms next. So like upset stomach, stomach cramps, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, fever, things like that. So we'll talk about that, talk about how like you usually don't see symptoms for about like a day after. It can vary. It can be within a few hours or like a day, a little bit longer. Again, ask them questions like, has any of your family members, anything like that, ever had food poisoning or that you know of? Because again, it's great hearing their stories, and it really makes the class go by a lot faster. And you can always change your class from day to day, gauging on how far you made it through the lesson. But my favorite part about teaching is hearing their stories as well. It makes it more fun for the students, I think, and for a teacher as well. So asking them if they've ever been through that or their parents or anything like that. Then we'll talk about like when you should see a doctor if it's serious. So again, high fever, anything like that. If you have frequent vomiting or diarrhea where you can't keep liquids down at all, if that happens for like a day, that can be extremely serious. You can get extremely dehydrated, things like that. So again, asking them questions about that. I know like when I speak with most of my students or go through this, they have questions about it. So it's nice to interact with them. Just steps to how to prevent. So again, all those 4 steps. Again, making sure we're washing, rinsing everything, cleaning everything properly is extremely important. So after that, again, that's just a brief overview of usually like the main things that I talk about during that lesson. And then I actually have a couple worksheets I'll usually give them throughout that. So I have a nice little worksheet here as well. Just a quick, brief, easy. There's word bank at the top here. And then they just go through, obviously this is the answer key, but they go through, fill those out. I'll give them an activity, give them time to do that. Or sometimes I'll have them work with a partner. And also have a food safety crossword puzzle as well made out for them. Again, word bank. This one actually doesn't have a word bank, excuse me. It just has the questions. Again, they aren't too difficult. It's 5th grade, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, so I don't make it too difficult. And pretty much everything in the crossword that we do are things that we talked about. And if they have any questions, they just raise their hand and ask. So try to give them things to do as well to get engaged or work with a partner, things like that. So some fun activities for him. Yeah, so that's just a brief little quick overview for my food safety little lesson there. So this typically, food safety usually only takes like a day or two, maybe a day and a half. Sometimes I'll have them do an activity in the book as well. But yeah, so overall, again, food safety, extremely important, especially at their age. But again, online safety, I usually go into after my food safety lesson. Again, online safety is probably one of the most important ones that I can think of safety-wise. Online safety and sports safety, especially online safety, just technology these days. Pretty much everyone is on social media. Things, some type of social media, Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is. It's a really, really fun lesson to talk about as well. And they really get engaged with the online safety one once we start talking about it, because they'll talk about like when they're playing video games online or if they've been hacked or anything like that. But it's great to hear all their stories. All right, but yeah, so there's my little safety unit there. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you liked it, have a comment below, and we will see you next time. Thank you, guys.